awkward androgyny, annoying American Idols, and the unsuccessful undead. All of these things have spelled box office poison so severe that movies were prematurely pulled from theaters. There have been many movies based on Saturday Night Live sketches, some of which have been very critically and commercially successful, like Wayne's World or The Blues Brothers. However, many of them have been box office disappointments, and maybe the worst was 1994's It's Pat, centered on Julia Sweeney's androgynous character from her early 90s tenure on the sketch show.
What can I say? I'm a very sexual being.
The movie follows Pat's romantic relationship with the similarly genderless Chris, played by Dave Foley, while their neighbor Kyle, played by Charles Rocket, resolved to figure out the character's gender once and for all. None of the one-note jokes translated well to the big screen, and as of June 2024, the film has a rare 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Fortunately, the film didn't have much of a presence theatrically to be pulled from in the first place. Its Pat only opened in 33 theaters across the country, raking in just under $61,000 during its opening weekend before being dropped. Sweeney later appeared on Showtime's Work in Progress and expressed regrets over playing the problematic character.
I feel terrible. I didn't mean it to be mean. I think I was really naive. I think I was, but now I'm like, ugh.
Winning American Idol during its first season was a career maker for Kelly Clarkson, who went on to become not just a successful pop artist, but also a daytime talk show host. That career trajectory wasn't without its bumps though, and one of the biggest bumps was from Justin to Kelly, a musical rom-com in which she co-stars alongside American Idol runner-up Justin Guarini. Clarkson was opposed to starring in the movie, knowing from the start that it wasn't going to work. She told Us Weekly, "I cried for a solid hour on the phone with the creator of American Idol and pleaded to be let out of the contract."
No, I didn't think I'd be doing a movie, no.
Clarkson's instincts were right, as the film only grossed $2.7 million on its opening weekend, against a budget of $14 million, and lasted just 2 weekends before nearly 2,000 theaters pulled it from their rotation. Critics weren't exactly positive about the film when it was released in 2003, just as Clarkson had expected. As Time magazine wrote about the film, in the most generous light, it is the worst film so far this century. Nicolas Cage is no stranger to starring in critically panned films, with two of the most noteworthy examples being Ghost Rider and The Wicker Man.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes!
However, the 2011 action flick Seeking Justice is one of the lesser-known Cage bombs, likely due to its limited time at the box office, grossing just under $250,000 in its opening weekend and getting pulled from theaters within 3 weeks. It's a strange premise that never pans out. Cage plays Will, an English teacher whose wife is brutally assaulted one night, resulting in Will enlisting a hitman's clandestine group to hunt down his wife's attacker. In his 1.5-star review, Roger Ebert's only commendation for the film was to praise Cage's acting, but saying that the rest of the movie was made up of preposterous scenes, pointing to the confusing logic of how this secret organization worked. While Seeking Justice may not be Nicolas Cage's most outlandish role ever, its short time in the theaters made it one of his most forgettable. Director Robert Luketic has pumped out some major hits, with his most notable projects including the 2001 comedy Legally Blonde and the heist flick 21. However, his 2013 thriller Paranoia wasn't his most inspired project, according to critics. The film's all-star cast includes Liam Hemsworth in one of his first starring roles as Adam, a corporate inventor turned spy. The New York Times called out his performance, saying, "He ambles through the role like an obedient robot." They also compared the film's direction to a deluxe perfume commercial, but Variety expected more from its theatrical results, writing, "Indifferently made and nearly tension-free, this Liam Hemsworth starrer should generate a moderate opening weekend box office. After that, it would be well advised to look over its shoulder." The filmmakers would have probably killed for a moderate opening weekend compared to what it got. Against its whopping $35 million budget, Paranoia only grossed $3 million in its first weekend, before getting pulled from over 2,000 theaters after its second weekend. Ultimately, it made just $17 million worldwide, still under half of its budget, making it one of the biggest box office bombs of 2013. David Koepp is one of the most successful screenwriters of all time, having penned films like Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man and the first Mission Impossible movie. However, his stints behind the camera have been less successful, with the most infamous example being Mortdecai, starring Johnny Depp as a corrupt art dealer in extreme debt who turns to theft, putting him in the crosshairs of law enforcement. In a review for The Hollywood Reporter, Mortdecai was described as stuffed with star names and classic farce ingredients, but its fatal flaw is an almost surreal lack of jokes. It's ultimately a frightful, crashing bore.
Steady yourself.
Its opening weekend gross of $4 million might not sound like much of a failure until you look at the film's astronomical $60 million budget. It ultimately made back less than $50 million in its worldwide theatrical run. Its domestic theatrical run, at the very least, didn't last long. Mortdecai was pulled from 2,000 theaters after its second weekend and had disappeared from all others by President's Day weekend of 2015. Director Michael Mann's impressive repertoire includes iconic films like Heat, one of the best crime movies of all time, and more recently the Adam Driver-led Ferrari. However, his 2015 thriller Blackhat was one of that year's biggest box office disasters, making just below $20 million throughout its entire theatrical run against a budget of $70 million. It was dropped from nearly 2,500 theaters after its second weekend, remaining in theaters for just 3 weekends in total. Reviews were divisive. The Los Angeles Times praised Mann's direction, but questioned the casting of Chris Hemsworth as a hacker recruited by the FBI to assist in the capture of a cyber-terrorist, saying, "The sullen cast he gives to the role testifies to his lack of comfort as much as anything else." Other reviewers felt it would be unmemorable in comparison with the rest of Mann's career, though Mann felt the film's failure was due to a lack of preparation. While some critics liked Blackhat enough to put it on their year-end lists, its failure at the box office was ultimately blamed on poor marketing strategy, as well as box office competition with American Sniper. Its negative reception also led to its Australian theatrical release being cancelled by Legendary Pictures, which was probably a blessing in disguise for Hemsworth. Ben Affleck has been a part of some hugely successful films, both in front of and behind the camera, but he's also been responsible for the occasional box office dud, like the 2016 crime movie Live by Night. Affleck directed, wrote, and starred in Live by Night as a bootlegger turned gangster in mid-1920s New York City, with co-stars including Zoe Saldana, Sienna Miller, and Brendan Gleeson. After a limited release in December 2016 that made just over $33,000, Live by Night made its wide theatrical debut in January 2017 and was dropped from over 2,600 theaters by the end of its third weekend. It ultimately ended its theatrical run weeks later, with only $22.7 million gross against a budget of $90 million, resulting in Warner Brothers losing upwards of $75 million as a result. Reviewers mostly found it a disappointment compared to Affleck's other work. Variety wrote, "It's like seeing the ghost of a terrific movie. All the pieces are in place, yet as you're watching it, there doesn't seem to be quite enough." If you want to watch a great movie based on Mattel toys that performed well at the box office, go see Barbie. But if you want a bad time, check out Max Steel. The action figure franchise received many adaptations across film, TV, video games, and comic books, but it was its live-action foray into movie theaters that seemed to doom the potential of the franchise. Released in 2016, the film centers on Max, a teenager who fuses with an alien named Steel to become a superhero known as, you guessed it, Max Steel. The movie is one of the few films on Rotten Tomatoes with a 0% rating, with IGN calling it undoubtedly one of the most unfocused and lifeless films to appear on the silver screen this year. Other criticisms questioned making yet another superhero film during a time of the genre's oversaturation. It makes sense why the company later approached 2023's Barbie with a little more care and reverence towards their own IP. Unsurprisingly, Max Steel wasn't an attention grabber with movie audiences, grossing only $6 million at the box office, against a budget of $10 million, and it was dropped from almost 2,000 theaters after only its second weekend. 2016's Collide was a record-setting film, but for all of the wrong reasons. The action movie had the second-largest second weekend drop in box office history, getting pulled from 1,000 theaters between its first and second weekend, and then dropped from theaters entirely. By the end of its short-lived theatrical run, Collide only grossed $6.8 million, with a reported budget of $29 million. The film stars Nicholas Hoult as a money runner who agrees to a high-stakes drug theft to secure funds for his girlfriend's kidney transplant. The impressive support supporting cast includes Felicity Jones, Ben Kingsley, and Anthony Hopkins. Unfortunately, the AV Club wrote that the film was unexceptional, a hodgepodge of corny voiceover, and repetitive, anticlimactic plotting. The film nearly avoided a release altogether when its distributor, Relativity Media, filed for bankruptcy in 2015. In the end, it didn't even matter, because no one saw the movie anyway. Relativity Media's bankruptcy didn't just affect Collide. The Disappointment Room was also a future box office bomb caught in the crossfire. The film was finally released in September 2016 under a new distributor, only for it to plummet at the box office. Despite having a budget of only $15 million, the film's entire theatrical run only grossed $5.7 million worldwide before leaving theaters, with over 1,500 theaters pulling it by the end of its second weekend. Theatergoers didn't miss much. Led by Kate Beckinsale and Mel Rado, the film centers on a family that moves into a house with a mysterious locked room that forces them to confront terrifying visions of their past. The result was another movie that earned a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. While Variety commended the efforts of Beckinsale in the lead role as a woman descending into psychosis, they were less enthused by the rest of the film, writing, "Somewhere around the 2/3 mark, however, the movie skids off the rails as the storyline becomes at once less mysterious and more illogical." Sometimes a movie is so bad that it takes on a life of its own outside the movie theaters.
Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
This is a rare case for Morbius, a Spider-Man villain played by Jared Leto, who was given a movie of his own, released in April of 2022. It flopped both critically and commercially, with Collider writing, "Morbius prioritizes action over substance, doing little to establish character arcs, dynamics, and backstories in favor of focusing on action sequences, fights, and flashy CGI. For most films, a disappointing box office performance and scathing reviews would be enough to let it be forgotten. However, Morbius ended up gathering a cult following online through memes, incorrectly deeming it the most financially successful movie of all time. In typical tone-deaf corporate fashion, Sony misinterpreted these jokes and decided to re-release the film in June 2022 to capitalize on its online appreciation. The film's re-release didn't go according to plan, grossing only $310,000 compared to its opening weekend numbers of $39 million. After just one weekend of its release, nearly 1,000 theaters pulled it from its rotation for good, while the rest finally stopped showing Morbius after 3 more weeks. It's no secret that Warner Brothers has struggled to capture the magic of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 2023's The Flash might be their biggest failure in that department, as the film's release was marred by controversy surrounding its star, Ezra Miller, who played Barry Allen, aka The Flash in the movie. As a result, WB targeted the marketing towards its supporting cast, including Sasha Calle's Supergirl and Michael Keaton's reprisal of Bruce Wayne.
He's Bruce Wayne as Batman?
Not really, not so much anymore.
Unfortunately, the film had more than Ezra Miller to worry about, as reviews and online discourse surrounding it were ominous towards the future of the superhero film genre. Vulture's review was particularly dismal, claiming, "It's all a gaudy retread. Sell audiences the pain and joy they've already experienced. Ignore the present, dim the future." There was also criticism reserved for the embarrassing CGI moments, including digitally resurrecting deceased actors like Christopher Reeve, Adam West, and George Reeves. The film predictably bombed at the box office, grossing just $271 million at the end of its theatrical run, against a budget of $222 million. Despite opening in over 4,000 theaters, nearly 2,000 dropped the movie after 2 weekends. After the 4th of July weekend, The Flash rushed out of even more theaters.
It hurts. You know where it hurts? In my dick.
Okay, I know.